Coming up today, the MERS crisis in Korea takes a turn for the worse as 2 patients die. Several hundred people are now in isolation as the number of confirmed cases jumps to 25. President Park Geun-hye opens Korea's 12th Creative Economy Center in the country's southwestern Jeollanam-do Province. The focus is on fostering startups in the agriculture, fisheries and tourism sectors. Plus, a passenger ferry carrying more than 450 people has sunk in the Yangtze River in southern China. Only 12 people have been saved so far. Stay tuned for these stories and more. Hello, it's noon on Tuesday, the 2nd of June. You're tuned into our midday newscast here on Arirang TV. Thanks as always for joining us. I'm Mark Broome. And we begin our newscast with the fast-spreading Middle East Respiratory Syndrome, or MERS, outbreak, which has people in Korea on edge. Today, the country reported its first 2 deaths from the virus, and 6 new MERS cases have now been confirmed, bringing the total to 25. For more, we connect with our Connie Kim at the News Center. Connie.
Well, Mark, the rapid spread of the MERS virus is raising anxiety and putting health authorities on high alert. Now, as you noted, Korea's health ministry reported the country's first 2 deaths from the virus earlier today. The first was a 58-year-old woman who died Monday. She was initially hospitalized for severe asthma, but the doctors say her condition worsened after she came into close contact with the first MERS patient at the hospital. Now, until her death, she was only suspected of having the virus, and testing after her death showed positive. Now, the second person to die from MERS was a 71-year-old man listed as a 6th MERS patient. He was receiving treatment in an isolation ward after contracting the virus from the first patient. Now, 6 more people have been confirmed to have the viral disease, bringing the total to 25. But what's even more alarming, Mark, is 2 people were found to have contracted the virus from a secondary infected patient. All other patients confirmed to have MERS contracted the disease from the first MERS patient.
And Connie, the spread of the MERS virus has understandably unnerved quite a lot of people here in Korea. On top of those 25 confirmed cases, there are hundreds more people in quarantine.
You're right. Well, Korea's health ministry said 682 people who have had contact with MERS patients are isolated in their homes or in quarantine facilities to prevent the disease from spreading. Now, the number of people under isolation has increased more than 5-fold over the past 2 days. And Mark, you might also remember the person with MERS who traveled to China. He's since been diagnosed with the disease and is now under quarantine there. And to prevent more MERS patients from leaving the country, Korea has placed a temporary travel ban on anyone under quarantine. Now, this is critical considering Korea now has the highest number of confirmed MERS cases in Asia. And in light of such worrying figures, the government held an emergency meeting Tuesday. There, they reportedly discussed the possibility of raising Korea's epidemic alert level and expanding the range of the current quarantine measures. Meanwhile, the government has come under fire for its lax response to the outbreak, with the public criticizing it for a late and inefficient response. I'll have more updates in our later newscast. Back to you.
Well, thank you very much, Connie Kim, there for that report. Now, while health authorities here in Korea are trying to learn more about the disease, parents are becoming more concerned about the risk, the potential risk at least, to their children. But a 2014 report shows that young children are less likely, far less likely to contract the MERS virus than people in other age groups. Our Sun Jung-in has more.
According to a study by a joint group of international researchers, only 3% of MERS cases in Saudi Arabia were in children under 14 years old. The report, which featured in the International Journal of General Medicine last year, analyzed the epidemiological pattern of the MERS coronavirus when 425 cases were recorded in the country between June 2013 and May 2014. The study showed older people were more likely to contract the virus. Those in their 60s and older made up the highest number of cases, accounting for 32% of all infections. Patients under the age of 29 were less likely to die from MERS, with a fatality rate less than half the average rate of 40%. The highest rate was seen in the 45 to 59 age group, with 55%, followed by those in their 60s or older. What's noticeable was that the lowest fatality rate occurred in the 30 to 44 age group. Health experts say it's too early to conclude that the younger the age, the lower the likelihood is of contracting MERS. They also say a higher risk of exposure could be one explanation for the higher incidence of MERS in certain age groups. Doctors advise staying healthy and eating right because, as with any other viral infections, people with weak immune systems are more susceptible to the virus. 손정인, Arirang News.
Now, in other news, President Park Geun-hye has marked the opening of Korea's 12th Innovation Center for Startups, this time in the country's southwestern province of Jeollanam-do. In her address, the president said the center will apply the latest biotechnology and food processing techniques to Korea's traditional agriculture and fisheries industries to increase productivity and encourage young entrepreneurs to launch startups in the field. A dozen agricultural and fisheries agencies will also come together to provide mentoring services and funding to would-be entrepreneurs. The centre will also collaborate with GS Group to turn the culturally rich southwestern region into an international tourist destination. Preparations have begun for Prime Minister nominee Hwang Kyo-ah's confirmation hearing, set to run for 3 days from next Monday. A special hearing committee composed of 13 ruling and main opposition party lawmakers will scour Hwang's history and question him about his credentials. The hearing is expected to focus on claims of real estate speculation, evading military service, and receiving sizable legal fees during his time at a local law firm. The parties have agreed to select 22 witnesses, including a former lawmaker and attorney general, who will testify during the candidate verification session. The presidential office hopes Hwang is confirmed as prime minister before President Park Geun-hye visits the United States in mid-June. Korea's presidential office has slammed a bill passed late last week by the National Assembly that gave lawmakers the right to request changes to executive orders. President Park has indicated that she's prepared to veto the bill, so attention is shifting to what happens next if the president really does put the ball back in the Assembly's court. Our Park Ji-won reports.
What happens if President Park Geun-hye decides to veto a bill that has already passed the National Assembly? For the answer, we should take a closer look at Korea's constitution. According to paragraph 2 of Article 53, a vetoed bill returns to the Assembly within 15 days with a written letter explaining the objection and a request for it to be reconsidered. The bill is put to a vote again if the returned bill is listed up at a plenary session. And paragraph 4 of the same article states that if the article repasses the bill with the attendance of more than half of its total members, with at least 2/3 of those present voting in favor, the president's veto is overridden and the bill becomes law. So then the question becomes, will Korea's rival parties relist the controversial bill for a vote, and if they do, would it pass? If the bill fails to be listed at the full assembly, it will be scrapped next May when all the lawmakers' terms end. The bill allowing the assembly to request changes to presidential ordinances passed last Friday with 211 voting in favor among the 244 members attending the session. The sheer strength of support is why some watchers say the bill may be able to pass the assembly again. The rival camps are split on the matter. The ruling party is gathering opinions from lawmakers and legal experts, and lawmakers close to President Park are making their concerns vocal. The main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy says the presidential office should just respect the National Assembly's decisions. The NPAD is already looking into how to revise the ordinances related to the special Seoul ferry law. The party and the bereaved families say a committee set up to investigate the sinking is not impartial and should be altered to ensure the proof is transparent and fair. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
Now, in economic news, Korea's consumer prices grew less than 1% for a sixth straight month in May, fueling worries of deflation. According to a Statistics Korea report Tuesday, the country's consumer price index inched up 0.5% last month from the year before, a gain from the 0.4% growth tallied for both March and April. Excluding the effects of a recent cigarette price hike of over 50%, however, prices actually dropped last month from a year earlier. The statistics agency attributes the low consumer inflation rate to low oil prices and a lowering of city gas prices. Korea's core inflation rate, which excludes volatile oil and food prices, stood at over 2% in May for a fifth straight month. The agency says that's a sign people are spending. Korea's current account surplus streak continued for a 38-month in April and is on course to break the record next month. But the amount of the surplus is significantly less than it was the month before because of a faster decline in imports than exports. Park Geun-hye reports.
In the black for 38 consecutive months. That's the longest streak for Korea's current account surplus since the late 80s, when Korea logged surpluses from June 1986 to July 1989. The Bank of Korea's preliminary data Tuesday showed that the current account surplus in April was $8.14 billion. That's a 13.7% rise from the same month last year. But it's significantly less than the $10.43 billion surplus in March, which was a 4-month high. The central bank attributed the plunge largely to the primary income account, which recorded a $2.8 billion deficit in April from a $0.5 billion surplus in March due to an increase in companies' cross-border dividend payments. The balance of goods in April hit an on-month record high of almost $12.6 billion, up from $11.2 billion the month before. This amid an 11% on-year fall in exports. Imports dipped at an even faster rate of nearly 18%, with low global oil prices still named as the main cause for the decline. While the central bank expects the current account surplus to reach a record high of $96 billion this year, it's not necessarily good news, as there are concerns that the downward trend of both imports and exports may continue for the time being, and that Korea's price competitiveness is continuing to lose steam. Geun-hye, Arirang News.
North Korea has once again refused to participate in the long-stalled six-party talks over its nuclear program. According to the German press agency DPA, North Korea's Vice Minister of Foreign Affairs, Kang Sok-eung, made the statement on Monday during a meeting with the chairman of the German-Korean parliamentary group, Hamid Koshik, who was visiting Pyongyang. The North Korean minister reportedly said North Korea will no longer sit at the same negotiating table as the US, since it was clear Washington was threatening Pyongyang. The statement comes as South Korea and the US began a massive joint anti-submarine drill to tackle North Korea's threats. Now, when or if diplomatic relations improve between Washington and Pyongyang, the United States will prioritize recovery missions to find the remains of American prisoners of war and personnel still missing from the Korean War. Gary Shaw, Regional Coordination Branch Chief at the U.S. Defense POW MIA Accounting Agency, said when any kind of relations are resumed with North Korea, he's confident their mission will be the one that gets their foot in the door. The U.S. conducted excavation missions in North Korea starting in 1996, but safety concerns halted those efforts in 2005. The missions resumed in 2011 under an agreement with the North, but were suspended again in March 2012. U.S. forensic and excavation teams estimate that about 5,500 Americans' remains have yet to be recovered near the Jangjin Reservoir north of Pyongyang. A ship carrying more than 450 people, mostly elderly Chinese tourists, has sunk in the Yangtze River. Reports say that around a dozen people have been rescued from the scene of the sinking in central Hubei province. But strong winds and rain are seriously hampering rescue efforts. Now, the captain, who was one of the dozen reportedly saved, reported saying that the Eastern Star vessel was hit by a cyclone which caused it to sink. The vessel was heading from Nanjing to Chongqing. Chinese state media say Chinese Premier Li Keqiang is heading to the scene of the accident, and Chinese President Xi Jinping has ordered that no efforts be spared in rescue work. Now, militants from the Islamic State group have reportedly kidnapped around 500 Iraqi children to use as suicide bombers in Iraq and Syria. A local politician from Iraq's Anbar province told a local news agency that the children, all thought to be under the age of 16, were taken to IS-controlled territory, possibly for training at the group's Cubs of the Caliphate camps for child recruits. The official said he was concerned the kids would be brainwashed into becoming cannon fodder in terror and suicide attacks. Activists have long said that IS fighters try to convince children living near Islamic State positions to join the group, often without the approval of their parents. Well, those are the stories we've been following on this Tuesday lunchtime here in Seoul. For more of the latest, don't forget to check out our website, arirang.co.kr/news, and do download our smartphone application by searching Arirang TV from your online store. Do enjoy the rest of your day. Goodbye.